Did you know the blockchain gaming market, better known as Web3 gaming, is projected to skyrocket to an earth shattering $615 billion by 2030? Reporting for Agoracom, my name is Aurora, and if you now believe in the future of Web3 gaming, you're going to love this interview with StadiX Web3 Gaming, who stands at the forefront of Web3 gaming by offering a powerful and innovative platform that bridges the gap between traditional gaming and blockchain technology. For game developers and publishers, it's a gateway to new monetization strategies, allowing them to seamlessly integrate blockchain features like tokenization and NFTs without having to worry about expertise in blockchain, wallets, smart contracts, and just folks out taking their traditional games to brand new audiences. For players, StadiX provides an immersive gaming experience of rewards and real ownership of in-game assets that are no longer stuck in a silo. So this harmonious ecosystem not only fosters a strong gaming community, but also presents a lucrative opportunity for investors, making StadiaX a compelling addition to the digital gaming frontier. The company's StadX token plays a pivotal role in the ecosystem, serving as the cornerstone of its economic model. It facilitates in-game transactions, enables players to buy, sell, and trade digital assets with real-world value. Now, here's George and StadiX CEO Dan Wassel.
Thanks, Aurora. Great interview. Dan, welcome to the show, my friend.
George, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Hey, we love having you. This is not our first rodeo because you and I first met with Blockchain Foundry. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right.
But that's a great sign for everybody out there to know how much experience you have in the Web3 space. You've had a successful exit. You sold the company. And now you're on to Stadia X as your next great project. A lot of people are going to be watching that don't quite understand what Web3 gaming is or blockchain gaming. So before we get to the details of Stadia X, in layman's terms, what is Web3 gaming? Why should investors be considering investing in it over the next 5 years?
Yeah, and that's a great question, right? Because Web3 gaming is a fundamental paradigm shift in how users can control and appreciate the value that they get in-game from making purchases and acquiring different sorts of in-game assets. So, for example, in today's let's call it Web 2 gaming model, if I were to pay money to purchase a specific type of skin or a specific type of avatar in a game, that specific skin or avatar is ultimately really controlled by the publishers of that game or the developers of that game. I don't control that asset in a wallet of mine. I can't transfer that or sell it to friends. It's all being completely controlled by the gaming developer. And sometimes that's okay. But with the advent of blockchain technology, we now have the ability to put users directly in control of those assets so that if I have a cool avatar or a cool asset within a game like a sword or a shield, not only can I have the sovereign value of holding that within my own wallet, but I can also transfer that to friends, sell it to other users, and perform those operations in a way that ultimately gives me, the user, control over that asset and in control of what I want to do with it. And I don't have to get permission from game developers or game publishing platforms in order to take control of that asset myself. And where that really becomes valuable is when you look at things like World of Warcraft, for example. There's an in-game currency in World of Warcraft called gold. And when people acquire that, they'll often try to sell their gold to other users. But because that gold is implemented in a Web 2 centralized kind of way, there's lots of scams and loss that happens when users try to engage with a sale. If those tokens were instead implemented using Web3, there could be a much safer method of transferring value between users, and users wouldn't be worrying about getting scammed and losing their value in those transactions. You can take that up to a higher level as well. Let's take it up to the account level. I've played World of Warcraft for 6 months, let's say. I have an account that's got amazing level ups and XP and all that kind of thing. Maybe I get bored of the game and I want to sell my account for some value. I don't have an easy way to do that today in the Web 2 gaming world. in the Web3 gaming world, we can put users in charge of those assets and they can sell them to capitalize on the time that they've invested in that game. Because ultimately, when you say time is money, that's real, right? Like even if you're playing a game, that's still time. And so you can get that value back by taking your account and selling it if you want. And when you perform these sales, both the buyer and the seller have some confidence and some guarantees around what they're going to get because it's all ledgered on a blockchain. And so that is essentially the crux of what people are referring to when they say Web3 gaming. And there are lots of different assets related to games that users can now take control of. And Stadia X is really looking to increase the amount of control gamers have in that equation to well beyond just skins and avatars. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment.
Man, that's an amazing overview. And when you're talking about that, my sons had the exact same problem. One of them with World of Warcraft and the other one with FIFA, where they end up selling their accounts because after a while, they got tired. They've been playing it for a year or something.
Yep.
They built up all these, don't I'm not a gamer, but they built up all this cred and all these rewards and all that. And they didn't want to just throw it away. So they
Right.
had to end up, kind of a black market, go on eBay, talk to people, I'll sell you my account. And now what essentially Web3 gaming does is allow you to have way more flexibility. Is that why, Dan, when I said at the opening, when we said in the intro at the opening, that the Web3 gaming industry is projected to go over $600 billion by 2030? This isn't just a little fad or Dan to have a little pet project. This is going to be the next, you said, the paradigm shift, right?
Exactly. I mean, we have a lot of belief in that, and we think that some of the current ways that Web3 gaming is being utilized and marketed to the gaming space is not the best, right? We think that just like how normal gaming had to evolve, Web3 gaming is going through that same evolutionary cycle. And we have an approach to utilizing the Web3 gaming technology that we believe brings more value to both gamers and game studios and developers. And that is what is helping to fundamentally support this paradigm shift. And we really believe that the team that really gets this right is going to be at the forefront of this shift and be a value leader in this space.
Now, let's get on to what you guys do specifically. You're not looking to particularly to compete with the traditional gaming world, right? You've got a platform where you're coming to GeorgeCom Games. I've got all these games in the traditional forums most of us see them in, and saying, "Hey, George, do you want to tokenize your game and put on the blockchain, create these rewards, all this flexibility? We can basically do it for you. I know it's easier said than done, but plug and play, for lack of better terms. Because without you, I'd require blockchain experts, smart contract technology, wallet for all of that. And most people don't have that expertise. So let's talk a little bit more about your specific business model, and that you're actually looking to help existing gaming companies extend their games.
Exactly, right? We're not looking to compete with the traditional Web2 gaming space. We're looking to actually augment that model, right? So if you're a gaming studio and you've already got a catalog of games that you're offering to the market, you can now offer that in a whole new way without having to fundamentally start those games from scratch. And just like you were saying, you don't need to hire a full staff of blockchain experts and developers to make that happen, which today we see as a huge impediment to the market adopting this technology. Instead, you can use the APIs and SDKs that we provide to enable your games with more value, provide your users with more control over their assets, and in the process, help them to avoid potentially getting scammed or losing value when they are trying to sell those assets or when new users are trying to buy those so that they can engage with the game.
So to give another layman's example, I was when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the record industry, how we went from vinyl to DVDs, and that opened up new markets. Then we went from DVDs to streaming. So
Yeah.
essentially, what you did was those weren't competing with any artists. You're just giving Elvis's fan base a chance to use different platforms in order to have more options, like streaming on Spotify now. 10 years ago, you would have thought, oh, that's a bad business model. And now we know it's a fantastic business model. So that's essentially what you're doing, right? You're helping these gaming companies just get to a different platform that opens up new possibilities.
Exactly. And that's a great analogy because, if I want, I can still probably go find a CD somewhere of music that I like, but I can still also get that on a streaming platform. Most people opt for the streaming platform route because there are specific benefits and advantages that that brings to them. And this is a very similar thing, right? Well, there still are going to be people that want to engage with the Web 2 game, but as more people become familiar with the advantages of the Web 3 game and they see how easy it is to leverage those advantages, I think we will see more and more users shifting to the Web 3 version of games.
So let's talk about your current status. So all that sounds amazing. Now you've probably got an investor at home saying, "Okay, where's Dan and Stadia X here? Where are they at? Are they conceptual? Have they built anything yet? Where are you at in terms of your current status?" And then I want to talk about what your pipeline looks like. But where are you guys at today?
So we've been developing Stadia X now for about a year, and we are working on the development of both the platform and we're working with gaming studios to develop the initial games. A big part of that development effort is hardening the API and SDKs we want to offer to these gaming studios so that we can be confident that as we open that up to a larger public group of gaming studios, they have the tools they need to execute the games quickly and efficiently, and they don't need to worry about all this blockchain, gas, smart contract, yada yada, essentially, right? Like that's the litmus test that we hold our API and SDK up to. If we have our partner studios coming to us asking us questions about how to do this or that on the blockchain, that's a signal to us that we need to improve certain aspects of the API and SDK in that way. And so we've been working through this process probably for the better part of 6 months now. A lot of the first 6 months was conceptualization, white paper, getting the team together, all that kind of stuff. Now we've been developing for the past 6 months, both the platform and the API and SDK offering, and working hand in hand with our gaming studios to make sure that their games are implementing these API and SDKs properly. And so we have 3 games that are on the cusp of being ready to launch here later in Q2 of
Nice.
this year. And those games will allow users to experience all the benefits of the Stadia X platform, from game and event passes to in-game currencies you can hold and utilize to being an active participant in the community and helping to steer the future of the platform, earning loyalty rewards for engaging with games, and having portability of value between games. Stadia X is an ecosystem, and there's a lot of value there for gamers, investors, and game studios. And that is what we're fundamentally bringing to the market and looking forward to rolling out in a larger way later this year.
And by the way, for everyone at home, again, that may have heard Dan refer to SDKs, which are software development kits, and APIs. We won't go into the deep dive with the tech side, but essentially what those are the connectors
Right.
from George Com's, traditional gaming software code in order to put onto Stadia X with the blockchain, all that stuff. SDKs and APIs essentially connect the two. They're the bridges, for lack of a better term. And if you understand that, then you don't have to know anything more. You don't need to be a programmer. So you've got 3 games that look like they're going to launch in Q2 here in the next couple months. Above and beyond that, how does your pipeline look? And now the concept is great, but devil's advocate, there are a lot of gaming studios out there. George Com Gaming, Agoracom Gaming, those aren't real. I'm just using those as
Yep.
examples because I don't want to use real names and people think you're actually maybe or maybe not talking to them. But
Mhm.
how do you get to them? How do you get to George Com Gaming and say, "Hey, we've got this platform to help you, blockchain your games"? How do you get to them, and how's your pipeline looking right now? Are you happy with how that pipeline's been growing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, I think the first thing to just take a quick step back is to outline that although we've been working on Stadia X for a year, we're in the process of raising funds to really take this thing up to the next level. And that is probably the nearest term milestone that we have coming up next. January 26th, we're launching our token generation event. People will have the opportunity to participate in the token. The tokens offer utility within the platform, access to games, discounts on different elements within the ecosystem. And by raising those funds, we will be able to develop this platform into the future and really take things up to the next level. In terms of how we reach gaming studios, it's actually been a bit overwhelming the amount of inbounds we have on that front, because gaming studios are just like any other business. They want to maximize their lines of revenue. And if they have an existing catalog that's only available to Web2 gamers, and they hear that they can take that same catalog and operationalize it for a new audience with increased value, that's a huge benefit to them. So we've had a number of studios reaching out to us that want to immediately get into
Nice.
developing more games. But, we have to, we take kind of the crawl, walk, run approach. We don't want to immediately start with 10 games and then we realize something's wrong and then there's 10 bad experiences multiplied times the number of users playing those games. We're starting with 3 games. We're rolling them out in an alpha beta kind of way. We're getting user feedback. We're getting developer feedback. And then once we've hardened all of that stuff around our APIs and SDKs to make sure it's a smooth experience for both gamers and developers, then we'll be opening it up to a larger public audience of gaming studios and revisiting some of these inbounds that we currently have coming in who immediately want to kind of get going with their own implementation on the Stadia X platform.
That's
And
great.
when we come back to them, they'll have a much better experience, right? Because they won't be guinea pigs. We have three games that we're working with current studios, and they understand they're the guinea pigs, and they're very amenable to that process, so that as we start scaling up with more studios, they just get to hit the ground running and be working with perfectly running code. They don't have to worry about going through all of the sort of development phase that is the prequel to getting into the real up and runningness with a larger group of games.
And I'm sure they appreciate that, because most entrepreneurs make the mistake of, "Hey, George, you like it? Yeah, we're ready to take you on right now," because everyone's
Yeah.
urgent to get the business side going. But then you
Mhm.
end up tripping all over yourself, and then George Cobb says, "Hey, Dan, lose my number because you guys could." So I really respect the fact that that goes back to your experience, and we'll talk about that at one point. But that just comes back to your experience of how, as excited you are about the technology and the platform, and as robust and what you see it'll be able to accomplish, you still have to crawl, walk, and run rather than try and run right off the bat. And like any little kid, you set them falling on your face.
Right.
So that's one side of the equation, which is how do you get the games and the developers in? Here's the other side of the equation. How do you plan to attract gamers themselves? Right? So
So
because you need to attract the games. So we talked about that. You've got a nice plan there. How do you plan to bring in the actual gamers themselves? So you've got 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and God bless, hopefully 1 million players, going forward. How do you plan to do that?
So it's a bit of a two-prong approach there. Like, one side of the approach is that we're going to be providing these gamers with a fundamental new level of value for the spend that they are already experiencing in games. And when I talk about spend, I'm talking about spending money in games and I'm talking about spending time in games. Both of those things are valuable to gamers and they're investing them in the game with their playtime. And in many cases, as we see today, particularly in the mobile space, which we're very focused on, you see people having in-game purchases, having pay-to-play models. Some models are even pay-to-win. Like, there's a game called World of Tanks, where you can just buy the strongest tank and then you can go rolling around crushing people. And when you put that money in those games, you're locking that value into a silo. And you may have a cool tank in World of Tanks, but you can't transfer that easily to other users. You can't take that tank and use it in another game. You can't take the time that you spent in World of Tanks and turn that into any other kind of value. What we're doing is putting that back in the hands of users so that you can take that time and turn it into other kinds of value. You can take those assets and use them within an ecosystem of games. And I think that purely through word of mouth, users are going to start understanding that they're getting a lot more for their time and money in the Stadia X ecosystem than in the traditional Web2 gaming ecosystem. And that will naturally lead to more users coming over to the Web3 experience relative to either net new games or existing gaming catalogs that we're working with studios to convert to Web3. The other side of that approach is working with gaming communities, right? Reaching out to communities focused on gamers who are networking groups of these gamers together to talk about their experiences. It might be around a single game or a group of games. And so we're working to interface with these communities and provide them specific incentives and benefits for trying out the Stadia X experience and providing their communities with exposure to Stadia X so that our target audience, gamers, are able to experience the value of Stadia X and the ease of use that comes with Stadia X, and then they can decide for themselves. And I wholeheartedly believe that if you spend $5 in Candy Crush and then you have nothing to show for it, and then you spend $5 in the Stadia X version of Candy Crush, and you can take $4.50 of that back out and use it in another game, that is going to be highly motivating for gamers, and it's going to provide value both on the word of mouth side and within the larger gaming community side.
And to that end, that's not just theory. You've already I saw your X some X posts. You guys have been hitting some pretty big numbers. You've last I saw, and it's probably grown, 17,000 Discord members, 40,000 people on your email list. What are your latest metrics, Dan? Because obviously you guys have caught a little fire here.
Yeah. I mean, based on what we've been doing just this week, I mean, we are having some pretty awesome numbers. As you mentioned, we have over let me pull up these numbers real quick so I can give you
I love it.
the
Get it done in
actual.
real time.
Yeah. So let's see. We have in 1 week we've developed 17,000 Discord users, 9,000 Twitter or X followers, 40,000 newsletter subscribers, 1,000 Zeely champions. Zeely is a Web3 bounty program that we're utilizing so that users can participate more in the Stadia X Origins airdrop, which is 10 million tokens and will be getting released along with our token generation event. And we have almost over 1 million views on our website just in a week's time. And so it's definitely getting some serious attention from the community.
That is amazing, Dan. That's I mean, you've got the games coming, you've got people already watching. That's why we're so glad to have you on Agoracom, because listen, third-party validation is everything for us. I mean, there are a lot of great ideas out there. I can tell you 10 great ideas off the top of my head, but if you're not executing, if you don't have a real plan to get to the end game, then it's just an idea, right? And we want companies that have got third-party validation. And to me, when you've got that many people already, and here we are in the middle of January, I can't wait to see where we're going to be at the end of February.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And we have a lot of additional events coming up as well that we think is going to further increase the community, really starting to focus more on like North America and Europe and Asia with our efforts. And I think that, we have a lot of growth still to experience in those markets. And, by the time we get to the token generation event, I think we'll be pushing numbers close to a community of over 100,000 users.
I'm going to timestamp that. I'm going to timestamp that. Hold on. 100,000. I want to make sure we check back on that.
We'll come back and revisit February.
You're going to revisit that at the end of February. Now, devil's advocate. Great. Stadia X. We've talked about it. Everything sounds good to everyone who's watching or listening at home. What does the competitive landscape look like? Because you're probably not the only. I know it's still early, so there aren't. But what does the competitive landscape look like? And what advantages do you have over GeorgeCom, Web3 gaming, and for example, so landscape and your advantages where you differentiate against the competition?
So this is a good one because, a lot of people that we talk to hear the words Web3 gaming and then they literally have blinders on and they think that our offering is the same as everyone else's because it's Web3 gaming. And that is fundamentally and categorically incorrect. I mean, the traditional Web3 gaming offering today is a siloed single game experience that allows you to have sovereign ownership around some of your in-game assets. Usually they're in-game assets, not in-game currency. So things like avatars, swords and shields, ships, that kind of thing. And you can then sell and trade those with friends, and then they can use them in the game. And that is basically it. There has been a little bit of evolution that's happened on top of that, in that now I'm seeing more companies who are offering sort of a minting service for games where they will help to develop the blockchain assets that then can be used in these Web3 games. And they might have a marketplace that's focused on digital assets that can be used in games, sometimes called NFTs. And they'll make a specific marketplace to offer those to, a gaming audience. But what we're doing is fundamentally different than that. What we're doing, I like to equate more to like a Web3 version of Steam. We're a Web3 game publishing platform. So we work in the middle between gaming studios and gamers to connect the two and to connect them with a higher value proposition through the StatX token, which is a utility token that we'll talk more about in a moment. It's used on the platform, and also a number of different on-chain digital assets from digital scorecards to digital memberships, and of course, what you see already today in the Web3 space with digital in-game assets that you can utilize. But you can utilize our in-game assets not only in the games themselves, but also across games. So I can be using an
I
avatar.
love that part.
I can be using an avatar in one game and then use that same avatar in another game. Same thing with like going back to the World of Tanks example. If I buy a tank, I may be able to use that tank in multiple games. And that is very different than what we're seeing today in the Web3 gaming space. We do have a handful of competitors that are starting to chase a similar sort of idea, but we're very much out in front of this thing from everything that we've seen in the market.
Yeah, it's almost like the dream. It's almost like the dream model for both the gamers and the publishers at the end of the day. I just love the ecosystem, the cross pollination, the flexibility, the portability, all those things that, because I'll just give you 10 seconds, but when my kids, I limited how much they could play games, right?
Yeah, I see.
And one of the factors was I used to tell them, hey, there's a diminishing return to how good you can be at that one game. There's no point in getting better than that because it's a diminishing return. Versus, thank God StatX was around 7, 8 years ago, because then they say, no, Dad, there isn't, because I can get really great at this game and all the rewards and all the things, and I can take them over to another one and then
Yeah.
another one. So yeah, I can keep growing. So thank God you weren't around back then. The StatX token, STADX. How does it function within the ecosystem? And what are the benefits? In other words, can you shed some light on its utility and potential growth?
Totally. What the StatX token is really fundamentally for is it provides access to gaming sessions. And for certain users on the platform who opt to become members because they really like the experience, they can purchase a membership, and then they'll have a certain number of essentially free plays every month where they don't need to always be buying StatX. But for the rest of the community, people who are not members or people who just want to play for fun and try things out, they will need a small amount of StatX token in order to engage with a gaming session. And that is the fundamental utility that we have around StatX on the platform. The reason for that is because as users pay to play a specific game, those funds accumulate in a prize pool. And as users climb to specific ranks on the leaderboard, those leaderboard ranks actually get a payout from the prize pool for the rank that they've achieved. And so we're not just charging people to play games because we want to develop a bunch of revenue and stick it in our books. We do develop some revenue from it. Of course, we're a business. That's how it works. But a lot of it is really going towards rewarding gamers for their time and providing them with material value for that time, so that, if you're on the bus and you're playing Candy Crush and you're not getting anything for that time, and you're spending money to get to higher levels, and then you're getting bored of those levels, you're losing a lot of value in terms of your time and your money. If you were to play a very similar game to that on Stadia X, you would not only be able to extract the value that you put into that game in order to play or to purchase specific in-game assets, but you can also earn more value than you even put in. Because if you're playing against 100,000 other users who've all put in, $1 of StatX, you could be competing for, a 5-figure prize. And I think that's really motivating, especially when you see the number of gamers that will respond to something as simple as compete for $100 prize. We really want to develop prize pools on StatX that are significant to users in material value, so that if they pay 25 cents to play the game and they have a chance at winning 100, 1,000, $10,000, there's a real motivation there, and will also that motivation will also help to attract a more competitive and higher caliber of gamer. And because we're going to have so many games on the platform, there are going to be some games that attract like the pro gamers and are super competitive, but then there are going to be other games that are just like casual games or puzzle games that you can play on the bus, and you might just so happen to reach a leaderboard position, and now all of a sudden you've made $500 on your bus trip instead of losing that hour of time and $5 to $50 of value purchasing new levels in games.
I want to talk about something else that also blew me away with what you guys are doing. It's called account abstraction. Now, don't worry for everyone at home. What the hell is that? This is. Let me explain it, and then I want you to talk about it. One of the biggest hurdles to get George, a 50-plus-year-old guy, into a Web3 platform of any kind is I got to create a wallet and I got to go through all these steps. And I was like, what the hell is a digital wallet? How does this, forget it. And you abandon it and you say, I would have liked it, but the too many steps. You don't, you don't necessarily force people to have to go through that, do you? Because of something called account abstraction that gets George right into your platform right away. Talk
Yep.
about that, because I think it's genius.
Yeah. So without getting into like the cryptography of it all, account
Right.
abstraction essentially allows you to use smart contracts to generate wallets for users. And what that allows us to do is really reduce a huge amount of friction that traditional gamers would otherwise experience in a typical Web3 gaming platform. Because just like you said, for users to engage with a Web3 offering, they often have to create a wallet, remember the recovery phase, make sure it's secure, understand gas, and the list goes on. And after two of those points, people's eyes have glazed over and they've tuned out,
Yep.
especially when in the
Happens
web
to me.
and especially when in the Web 2 world, you can get into a game with like 2 clicks and figure out if it's a fun experience for you or not. You don't want to spend 20 minutes setting up a wallet and all of this stuff just to find out the game is not as fun as you thought. And now you've, lost a lot of time and value as opposed to gained a lot of time and value. So we're utilizing and leveraging account abstraction to make that process of a typical mainstream user going from a Web 2 game to a Web 3 game as similar to a Web 2 onboarding experience as possible, so that they don't have to worry about all that wallet setup and stuff. They can get right up into the game. And then as they develop value that's deposited into the wallet that's generated for them, they can then choose to figure out how to take that value out of the system and utilize it on exchanges or in other ecosystems when the time is right for them. They don't have to do that at the forefront and waste a bunch of time just to figure out that they may not like a specific gaming experience. They can go play 10 different games on Stadia X, figure out which ones they like or don't like, and then after they've developed some value playing those games, or they've contributed some value and want to extract that back out, then it's going to be really easy for them to set up whatever is
So
needed
smart.
to happen.
So smart. You just get me in. You get me, create you get me buying assets or participating. I'm winning.
Yeah.
And if it's all worthwhile, suddenly, hey George, you've got $100 or $500 or 50 or whatever it is, you know, you want to go through the process, George, of setting up your wallet so you can, officially say, yeah, hell yeah, there's $118 in there. So
Yeah.
I'll go through the 20 minutes. I love it. I'll go through the 20 minutes now of seed phrases and all that kind of stuff. So I just think that's genius.
And
Um,
even at
Last
that
question
level,
for you. Oh, go no, go ahead. Go ahead.
even at that level, we want to make that process for users going from the initial onboarding experience to actually extracting value from the platform and holding it in their own wallet simple as well. So when we get to the point where users want to withdraw their funds from the account abstraction based wallets to say their own wallet, we are also trying to make that process as simple as possible. And that includes things like education around security, If they need to remember a recovery phrase, what even that means and why they need to remember it. And so we still want the experience of users setting up their own personal wallets to only be like a 5-minute process, if that. And so we're really trying to not only reduce friction coming in, but also make it a better experience when they eventually do have to set up their own wallet to get that value out.
StatX, the token, is not an investment vehicle.
No.
But having said that, there will be people who say, hey, you know, I want to buy some of these tokens because I may not be a big gamer, but I want to buy some of these tokens. What can I do with them if I just want to buy them and be a part of StatX and see if it grows? Can I stake them, for lack of a better term? Can I just park them somewhere? And do you expect that to be something that occurs where people just naturally say, hey, I love this platform, I'm not a gamer, but man, I want to own some of those tokens. What can I do with them?
So that's a good question, because even though StatX is not intended to be an investment vehicle, there are a finite amount of these tokens, and these tokens represent users' ability to play and access games. And so as we see more demand for the platform emerge within the market, you're going to see potentially the value of these tokens changing in concert with that demand, because there's only so much supply. And so even though we will be scaling the cost per game along with any sort of value changes that may happen with the token, so that you're always paying a very small amount when you're playing these games. Right now it might be several StatX tokens to play a game, whereas in a year it might be a fraction of a StatX token to play a game. And that all depends on how the value evolves over time. But you can do more with the token than just play games, right? It does operate within the StatX and the StadiaX ecosystem. And the StadiaX ecosystem is robust, right? We have game passes, we have event passes, which are basically tournament passes. We have memberships, we have a reward store, we have a loyalty reward system, so that as users purchase these game and event passes, which are essentially different ways of owning a digital scorecard for games, they're able to utilize those game and event passes to lock them and start earning loyalty rewards in a model that's very similar to staking, but we just call it loyalty rewards because by users having a number of these digital scorecards, it shows that they're a loyal user. By locking them up and holding them rather than selling them on a marketplace, it shows that they're sticking around for the long term. And the more of these game and event passes that you end up locking with your membership, the more potential StatX loyalty rewards you can earn on a daily basis. And so I do think we're going to see a community of users really emerge around this, purchase memberships, be playing the game and event pass model and utilizing game and event passes to maximize their loyalty rewards. And for users who are only experimenting and end up wanting to sell their game or event passes on something like an OpenSea or other NFT marketplace, our community will be there to purchase those game or event passes, because the more of them that you hold and lock, the greater your loyalty reward rate will become. So that if I have 5 game passes locked with my membership and George only has 1 game pass locked with his membership, I'll be earning 5 times the amount of loyalty rewards that George will. And that then enables me to play that many more games. I can purchase that many more in-game assets and prizes. I can browse the reward store. And that is really a diverse ecosystem of value for the utility token beyond just the gameplay access that it'll get you kind of at the forefront.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's finite. It's finite, and you're right. As more games come on, and more players come on, there's gonna be more demand. The cost of the token will rise, you would think, but the supply will remain the same. So I love that model. Last question for you. Again, devil's advocate. No, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Google. I don't care if you're Apple. Anytime you're launching something, you always got to beware. I mean, who was it? It was one of the phone companies had their lithium-ion battery. Was it Samsung? Had their lithium-ion batteries exploding on about 6, 7 years ago. They had to kill an entire line of phones. Apple, when they brought out their maps, had someone drive into a lake instead of going down the street. So there are always challenges. So
Yep.
of course you're not immune to that. And I asked you a devil's advocate question before, and another one here. What do you see as your biggest hurdles? Because it's not just a straight line to success, never is for anybody. What do you see as your hurdles here for StatX going forward?
So I think there's probably 3 or 4 main ones that are at the front of my mind. The biggest one that we've been encountering so far is the whole Web3 blinders thing. You know, where we're talking to people about our offering, they're saying everybody's doing this, and then we say who, and then they tell us someone who they think is doing the same thing as us, and we look into that offering and we have to clarify to them that they're fundamentally different. And in 99% of the cases, they're comparing us to what is happening already in Web3 today, where it's just plain old NFT assets locked to a single game. And we're very different than that, right? And so that's one. The next one is going to be adoption, right? Like we were talking about with account abstraction and friction for users, learning curve, all of that kind of thing. Users coming from the Web2 space to the Web3 space are going to be encountering some aspects of the experience that are going to be net new to them, right? And in some cases, could be confusing and turn them off from the experience because of either the friction or the level of effort involved. So we're really leaning into latest kind of technology evolutions that have happened within the smart contracting space and the blockchain space to minimize that friction as much as possible, even when it comes to setting up their own wallets down the line, so that users can experience the entertainment and value that they get from playing the game rather than being overwhelmed by all of this, blockchain jargon, if you will. I also think that a big thing for us when it comes to the market as a whole is getting gamers to understand that when we say Web3 gaming, we essentially mean a lot of the type of gaming that they're already really enjoying. We're not trying to make everything in the game an NFT. That's already gotten some feedback from the gaming community that's not been super positive. And locking these NFTs to a single game is also a lot of times what these gamers are thinking about when they hear Web3 gaming. And so we need to, it's on us to educate consumers on what they're getting with the Stadia X platform and how it's different than other Web3 offerings that are on a similar spectrum, because we're really a game publishing platform, and there's nothing like this in the Web3 space, especially with an ecosystem as broad as what we're
Wow.
developing. And getting the gamers that are not Web3 indoctrinated to really understand that and not just write it off with the rest of NFTs and the sort of evolutionary path that Web3 gaming has been on to date is going to be up to us to mitigate that through education. But we have a rock star team. Like our team is made up of a number of professionals and developers that have worked either in the blockchain and digital asset space or the gaming space or both. And so I really think that with the team that we have and the experience we have on the team, we can really create something that is unlike anything that users have experienced to date and represents a fundamental shift in what people start to think about when they say Web3 gaming. And so, where there may be some headwinds, I think we've got the right tool belt to take care of all that stuff.
And on that note, your experience, like, because we can't go through everybody's. Obviously, you got a great team there, but let's go through a little bit of your resume, and don't be shy about where you started and where you're at right now, because that's a big part of leadership, right? You're not some guy who's enterprising and thinks, well, I can pull this off, so let me just try and pull this off by hook or by crook. You've got real world experience in blockchain Web3. Let's talk about that.
That's right. I started in the traditional technology space over 25 years ago, leading teams, starting as a developer, right? My hands on the keyboard, coding, all that good stuff. Still do lots of coding today because I love building things. So, I'm still heavy into coding. But as, you go through that career track, you end up inevitably, if you do a good job, you end up leading teams. And so I ended up leading teams first just on the front end and then scaling into the front and the back end. And then eventually I stumbled into blockchain technology around like 2014, and I fundamentally shifted my focus from being on sort of the enterprise software as a service space to moving more into decentralized technologies and utilizing blockchain technology for what it is fundamentally good for, which is transparency and sovereign value. And so that really started with a platform and a token that I helped to co-found called Syscoin, which has done really well and is still an operational platform. It has an awesome L2 that's been developed on top of it. It commands over 70% of Bitcoin's hash rate. So there's lots of miners that have come in and supported the protocol as well. And that then led to me founding a company called Blockchain Foundry in 2016, where we started kind
Where
of,
we met.
yep, where we met, and where we had initially planned on doing blockchain consulting and later pivoted to it being a blockchain product shop. We were really on the path of some pretty cool products there. And then WonderFi acquired that company later in 2022. And that's when we really started, a group of us from BCF, started talking about, with the experience that we've had and what we now know about the blockchain space, what might be a good use of the technology that not only would be valuable to a number of different sort of personas, gamers, game developers, investors, that kind of thing, but also would be something that we enjoyed working on, right? And we were fundamentally passionate about. And that's where we kind of came to the intersection of gaming and blockchain technology, because we saw how people were implementing it currently. We knew what we could do, and we also knew that we had inroads within the gaming community and gaming studios and that kind of thing to get them to appreciate the value once we developed such a platform. And that's when we really started getting going on really firming up the idea, all the different aspects and components of it. And here we are today.
Now, I know I said the last question before, but as you're going through that, I figured I got to ask this, and this could be a short because we could talk about for an hour.
Yeah.
What role, if any, will AI play in the code you develop, or helping users? It identifies that George is stuck and not sure what to do here. Let AI intervene. Do you foresee AI make its way into your ecosystem now, or say, George, for now we're going to focus on just what we're doing, and we'll incorporate AI in some next phase or something like that?
I definitely think there's a role for AI within the ecosystem, and I think that can be a really multifaceted role. I mean, we're already using AI within our community today. We have a bot that's essentially a GPT bot that we've loaded up with all the knowledge around Stadia X, and users can come to our Discord and fire questions at it, and it will answer you just like any human would around the different questions that you're asking about Stadia X, whether it be a high level question or a really low level question about how we're operating and deploying things. And as we get into Q2 and the actual launch of the platform, launch of the games, all that kind of stuff, I think we'll see additional opportunities to utilize AI technology within both the gaming experience and the overall platform experience. Don't want to talk to specifics right now because there's still a lot of evolution that has to happen there for us to appreciate the best places to fit that in. I will say that we will be looking for opportunities to leverage AI for the most value we can for gaming studios and for gamers. We're not just going to slap AI in there because it's a cool buzzword and everybody's doing that. I just saw Samsung launch their phone and it's like a whole AI enabled operating system. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I do think that there's going to be value for users with AI within the ecosystem and in games, and how they experience that and what that looks like remains to be seen, but it's definitely something that we've got an eye on.
I love the fact, again, you could have easily answered yeah, we're going all in on AI, but you're like, measure, the famous saying is measure twice, cut once, but you're almost like measuring 5 times, cut once. You're going to make sure that you really take a look at it before you implement it. Dan, man, we could go on for, we've been on for 48 minutes, so let's call it 50 minutes, and it's flown by. We go on for another hour, but I thought this was important first to get those big, 30,000-foot questions out of the way and get them into the marketplace, get them into the hands of, your audience, whether it's the gamers, the publishers, even people who just want to buy StatX tokens just because they want to be part of the buzz. And
Yep.
I'm impressed as hell. If I wasn't, you wouldn't be here, right? Because it'd be either just a great idea with no execution or no leadership, but you've got all the elements, and I can't wait. It's middle of January. like I said, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in February, March, April, May, all the way through over the next 12 months. And you've got a great team, you got a great product, and it's kind of like Spotify. You're going to help publishers go from CDs to streaming. You're going to help game publishers go from Web 2 and standard video, standard gaming to this great flexible ecosystem that's gonna only gonna make their player experiences that much better. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us, my friend, and I can't wait to have you back.
It's been great. I'm looking forward to the next session. We've got a lot of stuff coming up on the horizon. Users should stay tuned for January 26th. That's when our big token sale kicks off, and you'll have an opportunity to purchase these tokens for the first time. And then we start getting into launching the games in the platform, and I'm really excited to see how users respond.
And we're going to be here every step of the way.
That's right.
Each one of those milestones, as they happen, we'll be talking about them. And we'll be more even now at that point, we'll be just drilled in at that point, right? We'll be talking about the token sale, then we talk about game 1, then we talk about game 2. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Can't wait to have you back, Dan. And congratulations, good luck. I know this is hard work, so keep it going, my friend.
Thanks very much. It's hard work, but it's fun. When you love what you're doing, it doesn't really feel like work. So
yeah, I know it. I can see in your face. Everyone can hear it in your voice, and that's awesome. For everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening to my podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. To Dan Wasiluk, he's a CEO and co-founder of Stadia X. If you want to do more due diligence, get to Agoracom, get to the Stadia X profile there, where you're going to be able to get good layman information overview about what the company does. That's really important for those of you who are not Web3 experts just yet. And then when you've got that foundational knowledge, or if you're an advanced user, gamer, game publisher, and all that, just go straight to Stadia X's website. All sorts of great information out there, FAQs, white paper, everything you could possibly ask for. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.
Hey Small Cap fam, I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, we would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agoracom small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.